Hey everybody, Basilray from VapeTV.com, and it's been a really long time since I put out a video, so we've got to get back on the horse. So tonight we are going to take a look at this. This is the eTurbo Clear Atomizer tank from Mountain Vapor, MTNVapor.com. So the idea here is that it is somewhere between kind of a tank atomizer like the Ego T Atty and a CE2. So we'll take a closer look at this, but it's collared to fit on an Ego battery. So I've got it here on I think it's a 900 milliamp hour Ego, technically an Ego T battery, but we all know that's the same thing, right? So the pass-through battery. So this is the you know, roughly 3.3 volt pulse width modulated Ego style battery, the very traditional Janty Ego style battery. So let's give it a rip here. So, you know, it does work really pretty well. I struggle with the traditional Ego style battery. Just overall, it doesn't do enough for me. But this isn't bad to just keep sitting around. So that's kind of what I've done. I've had this one, I've been using it for about a week. Had a couple different liquids in it. It's very easy to rinse out. Not as easy to dry out, but very easy to rinse out and refill. So let's kind of take a deeper dive, look at this, and see what's going on. So here is a closer look at the eTurbo Clear Atomizer tank Omizer CE2-ish kind of thing that we've got here. So this has essentially it's a two-piece kind of unit. You've got this very hard plastic mouthpiece with the metal band here. You have the tank portion of the unit, and then you've got the collared connector. So you know you're gonna need a minimum of something like a gooseneck. Even just one 510 to 510 is not enough. You could probably stack some 510 to 510 adapters, but you know I certainly wouldn't recommend doing that. So here we go. Let's go ahead and pop off this very hard plastic mouthpiece here. So this sits in here. You can kind of see there's a little bit of a ribbing here, kind of a grooved top piece. So the metal band fits very snugly over top of that and seals this up. One thing I will say about this, I've had absolutely zero leaking from either the bottom through the atomizer connection or back through the mouthpiece. So inside here we've got a very traditional rubber filler. You can see I've got a little extra liquid that's pooled up here, and there it is kind of dripping out, but you know I've never gotten any of that in my mouth. Now here's kind of the one big gripe. You can't hardly even see it. This little thing here looks like a drip right above my fingertip. That is actually the wick. So there's just these tiny little pieces of wick on either side up here at the top. This works out pretty well for wicking because generally, you know, when you've got the mouthpiece on, it's going to fit nice and snug against that filler kind of cap, just like you'd see on a CE2, and hold it all into place. And you know, you're generally going to have it at some sort of horizontal kind of configuration here. So you're generally going to have juice at the wick where it needs to go. Now these rate in at about 2.5 ohms. I tried pushing a little extra power to one of these, and you know, it snapped in no time flat. These tiny little wicks, although they work well when you're using just a standard Ego style battery, right? They just cannot keep up when you start cranking up the voltage. So a little bit of a bummer there. You know, these really are meant to work on an Ego, and on an Ego they really do work quite well. They hold about 1 milliliters worth of liquid, and I haven't really figured out a great way to fill these. Unlike, big fat hand, the kind of CE2s, these top caps don't really have a port for filling. So if you look here, there's no kind of indentation. So what I've taken to doing is using a syringe and kind of just trying to jam it in here a little bit past the top of this, and getting it around the edge of that filler cap, and then injecting. And it holds right around 1 milliliter of juice, give or take a little bit. But you know, the big perk to this is no leaks, pretty consistent wicking as long as you're using it in an Ego style setup. So that's kind of a quick look up close with the eTurbo Clear Atomizer tank. Again, I purchased this from Mountain Vapor, mtnvapor.com. The stated resistance on this is somewhere between 2.5 ohms, 2.9 ohms. Mine is in at about 2.5 ohms. You get a little vacillation with the multimeter, but right about 2.5 ohms. So bottom line, it's $6 a piece. This isn't bad for having around in lieu of an atomizer or a filler-based cartomizer if you've got an Ego that you use out and about. I've had no leakage with this thus far, so pretty pleased there. Of course, like any kind of CE2-based cartomizer, you've got to be careful about getting liquid into that center air channel when you're filling it. You'll get a pretty raspy vape. I haven't personally gotten any backsplash into my mouth, so pretty pleased about that. But this would be great as kind of an entry level to the CE2, the Tank Atty, tanks in general, for someone who you maybe want to get started and they have an Ego battery. Like I said earlier, you don't want to push more than an Ego's worth of voltage to this, or the coil will not hold up. Part of that is just due, I think, to these tiny wicks. They simply can't keep up. Even though resistance-wise, this should be able to handle higher voltage. That's the one gripe about it, is that the wicks they're not quite beefy enough. But on an Ego battery, like, it's designed to fit with this kind of collar, to fit just like a cone would over this. Nice clean look. Works well, seems to be constructed pretty well. I've had this one going for a little over a week now. First 48 hours, I used it, would fill it up, drain it, fill it up, drain it, fill it up, drain it, and drain it by vaping, of course. And, no leaks, no problems, pretty consistent performance, but for me, something that I can really only effectively use on an Ego battery isn't going to be a daily driver. I don't get enough oomph out of the Ego battery. So, $6 a pop, mtnvapor.com. Nice kind of little entry level, midway between the Tank, the CE2, for those Ego users out there. Great kind of first little Tank CE2 atomizer. Be super easy to use, minus the kind of rigmarole with filling with the syringe. So check it out. It's certainly probably worth a buy. Maybe keeping one on hand as a way to just gift off to somebody who's got an Ego, and they'll be ready to rock. Again, you can always catch me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Vape TV Live. You can hit me up, facebook.com/Basilray, Twitter @Basilray, any of the forums, Basil phone, 612-293-6405. Until I see you next time, take care.
Follow me as I put these crayons to chaos, from seance to seance.